All right, hi everyone. Welcome to this week. We're going to learn perfect passive infinitives and another ablative. All right, so I just want to review this. This is from last week, just this idea of principal parts. I won't go over it in depth, but I do want to remind you of how the third and fourth principal parts work with the perfect tenses. Namely that the third principal part is going to be active and the fourth principal part is going to be passive. All right, so just keep that in mind because that applies to this week as well. And here are those forms. This is the indicative passive forms, okay? Remember that you take the fourth principal part, and then you add some form of the verb to be as a separate word, and that formula, again, is going to apply to this week also. All right, and just here's the verb, a verb laid out in all its forms with some descriptive info on the right. All right, so again, active for third principal part, passive for fourth. All right, we've already learned a present or a passive infinitive. Excuse me, that's the present passive infinitive. Remember, for the present passive infinitive, you take the re and you change it to an ri. So re to ri, except for third or the whole, ere becomes an I, and third is the same. The whole ere becomes an I, and for fourth, back to re to ri. All right, so here is the perfect passive infinitive. All right, so first, you'll note that we're dealing with the fourth principal part, as we talked about, right? Fourth is where we do perfect passives, okay? Now, the trick is, if you'll notice this verb to be form, excuse me. All right, so you'll note that for the perfect passive, all right, we've got fourth principal part plus present of sum, all right? Note that that combination of the fourth principal part plus the present tense of sum gives us the perfect tense. And the trick is, and this hopefully will make it a little easier to remember, that if it's an indicative form of sum, the whole form is going to be indicative. If it's an infinitive form of sum, the whole form is going to be an infinitive. So I take the present indicative, right, sum as est, sumus est sunt, to make the perfect passive indicative. I take the present infinitive, esse, which is right here, right, to make the perfect passive infinitive. So all these are going to work the same. Fourth principal part plus esse, including irregular verbs. Remember, we talked last week or 2 weeks ago, I can't remember, about how that fourth principal part is a participle, and as a participle, it will agree with its subject, so this will be no different. The only difference is that the subject of an infinitive is in the accusative. So because it's infinitive, these endings will always be accusative endings. So this is the masculine, could also be the neuter, and the feminine would be audi tom, cop tom, posy tom, etc. All right, and that's it. Remember, infinitives only have one form. So the perfect passive infinitive, fourth principal part, plus the present of sum. All right, so let's do a little practice. So these are all infinitives, and we're going to identify the tense and voice of them and then translate them. All right, so miti, this is going to be present. And it's going to be passive. This is a third conjugation verb, and it's just get that I, so present passive, to be sent. All right, specta wisse, so this is perfect, and this is active, right? Isse on that third principal part, perfect active, to have watched. All right, now, constitutum esse. This is going to be our perfect passive. There's our fourth principal part, plus the infinitive. So perfect passive. All right. Now, if, excuse me, the active is to have verbed. All right. The passive, we're just going to throw that been in there. To have been verb. Excuse me. So to have been decided. Now, as the infinitives get a little funkier, a little rarer, it becomes rarer that they're used as actual infinitives. The whole range of infinitives is most commonly used in indirect statement. Certainly with complementary infinitives, you're going to have your present infinitives used pretty commonly. All right, but when you get into things like the perfect passive, which is not a particularly common infinitive, it's rarely going to be used with want, right? You're rarely going to say, I want to have been seen, right? That's going to be used more in an indirect statement, all right, which in English we translate as an indicative. But just sort of keep that in mind as we move forward, and we'll learn indirect statement once we learn all these infinitives. All right, so standard, here come the answers, pause if you want. All right, and so between the ones I did and these, you got most of them done at least answered so you can check your. All right, here's a present passive infinitive text. So this is for the monogamy, which I think we've seen before, the one with the twins, where there is the mistaken identity. So there are perfect passive infinitives in 1127, 987. Where are we here? Oh, there we go. All right. 1129. All right, and 1134. All right, and then what is the gender of their subjects? So given the UM here and the UM here, masculine. All right, could be neuter again, but masculine is going to be the more common. And then the OM is sort of an old form of UM, so that's going to be masculine as well. All right, so we're going to shift gears a little bit here. That's it for the perfect passive infinitive. It's just that one form, as I said. So we're going to learn a new ablative, and I just want to remind you of ablatives. Remember that ablatives tend to be adverbial in function. Now, this is about adverbs themselves, but remember that ablatives will tend to give adverbial meanings. So time, manner, place, degree, frequency, all right, means and manner are kind of the same. And again, though these are ablatives, you can pretty much substitute them for prepositional phrases in English that would be ablatives in Latin. So walk across the road carefully, walk across the road with great care. All right, and that would be an ablative of manner. Okay, so again, ablatives and adverbs will often say the same kind of things, even if they say them in different ways. So just to revisit some of the ablatives that we know, the ablative of means is probably the most common. There's no preposition. It expresses how something is done, all right, and is usually translated with by or with. All right, and this is just an ablative of means example. So here's our ablative of means. All right, so Pyramus and Thisbe, kind of a Romeo and Juliet story. In fact, the ancient antecedent for Romeo and Juliet. So this is as they were kind of conducting their relationship in secret. So they speak, loquuntur. How do they speak? They speak with nods, nutu, and signs, signis. All right, so they speak with nods and hand gestures, winks and hand gestures. And that's our ablative of means because it explains how they speak. All right, here's an English soccer team for you soccer fans out there. All right, with skill and with work. All right, arte et labora. All right, so how are they going to win? Arte et labora, with skill and work. All right, a military branch, same thing. So with virtue and weapons. Virtute et armis. How are they going to be victorious, be successful, whatever? With virtue, courage, probably in this case, and weapons. All right. And so again, this is just another ablative, the ablative of cause. All right. These are ablatives without prepositions because the ablative we're learning this week, the ablative of specification, also does not use a preposition. All right. So in the example up top here, dux choris ager arat, the leader was sick with worry, all right, because of the things he's worrying about. All right, they do many things, out of fear, because of fear. So the ablative of cause essentially just is translated because of. All right, and this could go a couple different ways, but small things, right, res parvi, grow through because of harmony. All right, concordia, sort of getting along. And that could be means, that could be a couple other things, but it could be cause as well. Excuse me. And these are just a couple other ablatives with cum. All right. Accompaniment and manner. You can see those here. The ones with prepositions are relatively straightforward because you just translate the preposition, and most of the time that is a correct translation. And again, these are review. We've already learned these. All right, so here's the ablative of specification. All right, this is sort of the new one. So a couple things. So without a preposition, this is just from your textbook. So without a preposition, all right, the idea is in what respect something is or is done. The specification part is actually the easier way to sort of remember it, because the specification part means that it takes something a little general and it specifies it. So the example that I always use is there's a pretty well-known author called Ovid. His full name is Publius Ovidius Naso. And the way the Roman naming system works is that the second name, right, is sort of what we would call the last name. It's sort of the family name. The first name is kind of the first name. And then the third name, kind of the last in order, but not the last name in the way that we mean it. The third name is, for lack of a better term, sort of a nickname. Nickname doesn't quite capture it, but the idea is that it is some term, word, whatever, that kind of sums up the person's life or represents sort of who they are. So, like, there's a famous general named Scipio, who defeated the Carthaginians, who live in North Africa, and so his nickname, quote unquote, was Africanus, right? The African, because he was the one that conquered the Carthaginians. So Publius Ovidius Naso, and it's going to sound sort of meaner than it is, certainly than it's intended. Naso, of course, is nose. And it's a second declension noun, or at least that's one way of interpreting it. It can also be a third declension noun. I believe it's neuter. Let's say that it is. All right, and so naso becomes the ablative as a second declension noun. And the idea is that what is understood, right, is magnus. Magnus, of course, being big. So Publius Ovidius understood magnus naso. Not saying, of course, that Publius Ovidius is magnus, is big overall, right? They're saying that he is big with respect to his nose, all right? I.e., he has a big nose. And again, it's not meant to be mean. It's not sort of as mean as it sounds, all right? But that's what is meant by the ablative of specification, that it sort of specifies, it takes something general and makes it a little more specific. All right? Along a similar lines, if I were to say someone were magnus pedibus, right? What would that mean? That would mean they would have big feet, right? And the opposite is parvus pedibus. Forgot the guy. It means they have small feet, right? Small with respect to their feet. Not small overall, but small with respect to their feet. All right, so that is the ablative specification or respect. Let's take a look at the superlatives. All right, we have some reading. All right, so Gallia est omnis divisa in partes tres, quorum unum incollant Belgae aliam equitani tertiam ei, qui lingua nostra Galli appellantur. He omnes lingua institutis legibus inter se different. All right, so this is the famous opening to Caesar's Gallic Wars. All right, so Gaul, or I should say all of Gaul, omnis Gallia, so omnis and Gallia agree. So all of Gaul is divided into three parts. All right, one of which, so the unam, right, goes with the partes, or at least the singular version of partes. So one of which the Belgae inhabit, another of which understood, the Aquitani inhabit understood, the third of which, all right, those that are called, are called in our language Gauls inhabit. All right, so all of Gaul, oh boy, I feel a sneeze coming on. Hold on. Excuse me, sorry about that. So all of Gaul is divided into three parts, and now we're going to learn about each of those three parts. So one part of which, all right, the Belgae inhabit. Excuse me. Another part of which the Aquitani inhabit. The third part of which those people inhabit, right, again, inhabit understood, who are called in our language Gauls. All right, next sentence. So all of these differ with respect to, and there's our ablative of respect. So all of these differ with respect to language institutions or systems and laws. All right, and they differ amongst themselves, between themselves. All right, so I'll leave the rest for you. And here's the writing. So some English to Latin. All right, those dangers had been avoided. Hike pericula. Pericula is a neuter noun in the second declension. So hike is that neuter nominative plural. All right, and then had been avoided. That's our pluperfect passive indicative. So we ta ta. That's we tara, to avoid. That's the fourth principal part. That's the neuter plural ending to go with pericula. And then errant, right, which we need as that pluperfect, right? Sunt would be perfect, have been avoided. Errant is going to be pluperfect, had been avoided. Excuse me. All right, so the soldier, Miles, was led through the countryside, per, all right, I'm hesitating because rus is kind of a funky noun. I can't remember whether that's actually the accusative. I feel like because rus is missing some form, so I'm not even sure it has an accusative. I'm trying to think of a synonym for countryside. All right. By the brave leader. So that's going to be our ablative agent. Passive verb was led. Who's doing the leading in a passive verb? Who's doing the action, I should say, in a passive verb? In this case, the brave leader. So that is our ablative agent. So, forti duce. All right, fortis forte, brave. Remember that for third declension adjectives, it uses an I for the ablative. And, of course, for third declension nouns like duce, it uses that E. Okay, so it was led by the brave leader. And then, of course, we need the verb. So that's going to be the perfect passive. All right, so ductus est. All right, and there you go. And I'll leave the rest for you. That's it for this week. Please email me with any questions, and I will be here next week. Thanks.